The Monkey King Enma is one of the weirdest but also strongest summons in the series. He was Hiruzen's prime summon in the series, and the variety of powers this summon offered to Hiruzen was probably unmatched by any other summon in the story. So today let's talk about Monkey King Enma and everything he did in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. The inspiration for Enma is a legendary Chinese monkey king called Sun Wukong in Chinese, or Son Goku in Japanese. And by the way, Enma looks with white hair, white beard, and if you take into account that in the anime, Hiruzen summoned Enma to Jiraiya when Jiraiya was a kid to show him what a summon was all about, and Enma already looked older when Hiruzen was in his 20s, it's very likely that this guy is ancient. He wears this traditional shinobi attire, and one of the interesting aspects about his appearance is that he has a Leaf Village headband, implying that he is a shinobi of the Leaf Village. And not all summons have that. The only other summons that I can recall that have the Leaf Village's headband are Kakashi's dogs. So does that mean they went through the Ninja Academy with other human kids? Because that just sounds funny to me. But no, it's much more likely that because Enma is the summon of a great shinobi of the Leaf Village and has the capabilities of a shinobi, he got the headband to signify his importance to the Leaf Village. And also to show that yes, this may be a monkey or a dog in Kakashi's case, but they're also capable like ninjas and they should be treated as so. So much so that Kakashi's dogs are called the ninja dogs. So yeah, they are ninja dogs. But obviously Enma is different from the dogs because Enma is probably the strongest animal summon in the series. I guess you can make the case that the multi-headed hound of the animal path may be stronger because of its hex ability of multiplying itself infinitely, but when it comes to the sheer power of the summon, the only other two that come close to it, both in terms of raw strength, ninjutsu, genjutsu, versatility and all that, are going to be Fukasaku and Shima. And that makes sense because the most famous summons in the series are gonna be Tsunade's, Jiraiya's, and Orochimaru's, and obviously the snake, the slug, and the toads they're powerful, but Hiruzen was their teacher, so his summon probably has to be more powerful than their summons. Just like Hiruzen himself is more powerful than the three Sannin. And yeah, Hiruzen died to Orochimaru. He technically lost the fight, but he was able to seal Orochimaru's arms, and Orochimaru was using the first and the second Hokages as Edo Tensei, which is kind of a big deal, right? That wasn't much of a fair fight, especially when you consider Hiruzen was old, so much so that he uses Enma to try and mitigate his numbers disadvantage there. And everybody says that Prime Hiruzen was crazy powerful, we just never really see him fight. But what makes Enma such a powerful and versatile summon for Hiruzen? Well, let's talk about his powers. First of all, Enma just by himself is a very different summon from pretty much anything else in the series. And that's because he is a humanoid summon. Yeah, I guess you can say the animal path can summon humanoids as well in the other paths, but this is an animal summon that's also humanoid because it's a monkey, so it's gonna have a human-like shape, and it's also pretty much the size of a human. Most summons in the Naruto series are either gonna be much bigger than a human or much smaller. So having Enma there feels much more like you have a duo alongside you and not just another animal summon in the battlefield. It's a very different vibe and it's very cool because it makes Hiruzen feel like this different type of character, and especially when he is battling against Orochimaru and the Hokage, you're supposed to feel like, okay, this guy is different, he is the Hokage of the village, he's extremely powerful, and his summon is very unique. Enma's physical capabilities are nothing to scoff at. In the anime, he punches Hashirama Senju extremely hard and makes him recoil, and yes, we know this is an anime-only scene. The Hiruzen vs Orochimaru fight is very much different in the anime actually. They put a lot of extra things and add some tidbits of animation that are pretty cool, and they make Enma seem even more impressive, but he's also impressive in the manga. Now, even though Enma's base form is gonna be pretty powerful, obviously it's not what he looks like most of the time, because Enma's signature ability is to transform himself into the adamantine staff, the iconic black staff Hiruzen uses to fight. And as the name suggests, adamantine is pretty tough, so he's gonna be very tanky in that state, able to defend and attack for Hiruzen with extreme efficiency. The staff is such an iconic part of Hiruzen's outfit, essentially, that when he's not using it and is geared out for battle, it feels like Hiruzen is not complete. Enma and Hiruzen have this very interesting relationship that's pretty much unlike any other summon ninja relationship in the series. Most summons are gonna be completely subservient to their ninjas. Other summons like Manda towards Orochimaru, for example, are gonna detest their ninjas and demand things in exchange for summoning them because they're so powerful and arrogant. Other summons will have a mentor-like relationship to their ninjas, like Fukasaku and Shima had a mentor-like relationship towards Jiraiya and Naruto, but Hiruzen and Enma seem to have this pretty equal relationship, like they're peers, and respect each other as if they are at the same level of strength, which is kinda crazy. Think about this, a summon having the same level of power as a Hokage, and Hiruzen was said to be the strongest of the 5 Kage at the time he died, so this is pretty insane, and yeah, Enma, as I said before, is probably extremely old. We don't know how old he is, but he probably was around for the Warring States period. And so on top of having a lot of power, he also had a lot of experience he could lend, and I imagine he lended that experience to Hiruzen when he was younger. Enma could also be very critical of Hiruzen, and that's an interesting aspect of the relationship. He tells Hiruzen he should have killed Orochimaru back in the day when he had the chance, but Hiruzen chickened out. And Hiruzen doesn't really get mad. He acknowledges Enma's statement there and says, "Yeah, I'm working on it, can you help me out?" But even though Enma was very critical of him in this case, he didn't even question helping Hiruzen in the situation, and obviously he aided Hiruzen in the fight against Orochimaru. And you have to remember, this is the Leaf Village's Hokage. It's not everyone that's gonna talk down to the Hokage, but his summon does, which means, yeah, he's very powerful. Obviously, when Enma takes the staff shape, he's not just a cool staff that Hiruzen whips around and uses to attack the opponents. No, he also has several abilities. As I mentioned, he's very durable, so much so that he's like, oh my god, the Kusanagi blade could actually hurt me a little bit. Orochimaru's sword. So that was a statement saying Orochimaru's blade there was extremely powerful, but obviously Enma wasn't killed or anything. He was just hurt, a little cut, and he bled, but that's it. The staff could also extend its shape by a lot. Like extend and attack the opponent, and attack with a powerful blow. During the Nine Tails attack the night Naruto was born, Hiruzen and the Leaf Village Shinobi were the ones fighting against the Nine Tails when Minato was busy with Obito, and in the anime, Hiruzen uses Enma and extends it so much that it hits the Nine Tails from like 100 or so meters away, if not more, and launches the Nine Tails outside of the Leaf Village. Unfortunately, this scene is not in the manga, but it's very much implied that this is what happened. Because in the manga, even though we don't see it being done, we know the Nine Tails is essentially thrown out of the village by something, and we see that happening in the anime. So yeah, it's probably safe to assume that actually happened, which means that Enma, by himself pretty much, because Hiruzen only held the staff and the staff extended and hit the Nine Tails, was able to push the Nine Tails, that gargantuan tail beast, the strongest creature in the verse, well, because the Ten Tails wasn't alive at that point, outside of the village. That's a very cool feat that looks cinematic as hell. And on top of just extending the staff itself, Enma can completely remodel the shape of the staff to protect Hiruzen. When Hashirama's Edo Tensei used the Deep Forest Emergence against Hiruzen and completely surrounded him by the wood-style attack, Enma transformed the staff into this cage that protected Sarutobi from every single direction, countering one of the most powerful Kekkei Genkais in the series. Yes, we know Hashirama and Tobirama were nerfed in that Edo Tensei version, but that was still a very powerful wood-style attack that this summon was able to counter. Hashirama's jutsu. So you can see the level of power here, right? The staff pushes back the Nine Tails, the staff protects Sarutobi from a wood-style attack from Hashirama Senju, the god of shinobi, even though it was a nerfed version. He can also move on its own and pretty much fly around Hiruzen. He did that to protect Hiruzen from another wood-style attack from Hashirama, cutting through the wood-style branches. And another ability that makes it even more versatile is that he can branch out limbs and even his own head outside of the staff, creating another vector of attack. In the manga, he extends his head outside of the staff and tries to attack Orochimaru with it, trying to essentially bite Orochimaru with his monkey mouth. And is only unsuccessful because Hashirama and Tobirama both kick Hiruzen at the same time, blowing him back. And that's when Hiruzen used that chance to put paper bombs on their feet and explodes them, but they're at a tensei, so they regenerate. In the anime, he also extends his arm to choke Orochimaru and break his neck, but Orochimaru uses substitution jutsu. And what's impressive when Hiruzen wields the staff is that he can move that thing really fast, even though it's a big, thick staff.
That's what she said!
Hiruzen is extremely agile with it. He was able to swing it against Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade, which is much smaller and therefore nimbler. And when Hiruzen and Orochimaru were simply swapping weapon attacks, Hiruzen was pressing Orochimaru down and winning the exchange. Also, Hiruzen uses Genma to save Naruto in Naruto Shippuden when the Divine Tree was attempting to devour him completely. And he swung that thing really fast to destroy the branches coming from all sides. Enma literally watches Hiruzen as he is dying, trying to drag Orochimaru's soul out of him using the Reaper Death Seal. And unfortunately for Enma himself, Orochimaru used snakes to wrap around all over Enma's body and pin him in place so that he couldn't help Hiruzen too much in that situation. But even though he was pinned down, he grabbed the Kusanagi blade when Orochimaru directed it against Hiruzen after Hiruzen grabbed him to drag his soul out. And even though the blade still pierced Hiruzen, if Orochimaru had free control over it, he could essentially destroy Hiruzen before he could do anything to Orochimaru's soul, meaning that he wouldn't even be able to seal his arms. So that was very excruciating for all those involved in there. Orochimaru and Hiruzen were in a tug of war for about an hour, in universe that is. And for all that time, Enma was holding on to the Kusanagi sword, trying to stop it from killing Hiruzen before he could die to the Reaper Death Seal and drag Orochimaru's soul out. And that's pretty painful. I mean, it was cutting Enma's hand, even though he was very durable, but also the anguish of watching your ninja dying in front of you and not being able to do much about it, because Enma knew what was going to happen. He knew what the Reaper Death Seal was all about, and he had been Hiruzen summoned for decades at that point. When Hiruzen finally dies, Enma acknowledges that as a great last stand, and a death worthy of a shinobi. And there's something kind of interesting here as well, because when Enma gets unsummoned after Hiruzen dies, he brings Orochimaru's sword with him. The sword he was holding on all that time disappeared with Enma when he puffed into white smoke. Which is just kind of weird, isn't it? But obviously Orochimaru has his sword back in the next arc, so it's not as though Enma stole Orochimaru's sword or anything. Orochimaru probably just summoned it back somehow, because he definitely used to pierce Tsunade all over the place in the next arc anyway. Now, it is kinda disappointing that Enma never really appears again in the story. Sure, he shows up a little bit during the Nine Tails invasion and also during the war arc, very briefly in the war arc, but Enma never really has a line again. He never talks to Hiruzen. He had an interesting personality. This old, summon, extremely powerful creature of the Naruto universe who was an equal to the Hokage, and it makes sense as to why he wouldn't appear too much, because Hiruzen doesn't have a lot of fighting screen time, especially when he was alive. He only had one fight, really, against Orochimaru there. And obviously, Hiruzen is not going to be the main character in the Nine Tails invasion. That's obviously the Minato flashback. And Hiruzen was a very minor Hokage Edo Tensei in the war arc. Out of the four first Hokage they were brought back, Hiruzen is definitely the one who does the least. And for a good reason. He wasn't as useful in the situation they were in as the others. But even still, Hiruzen and Enma could have exchanged a couple of lines at least. That would have been cool to see. But other than that, the only solution I can see for more Enma screen time in the Naruto series would be for someone else to inherit the summon. And that would have been problematic. Like, for someone to inherit Hiruzen's summon, it would probably have to be someone from his family, or one of his students. But it wouldn't make any sense for one of the Sanin to inherit the monkey summon, because they all have their particular summons that are very much connected to their characters, so it would likely have to be someone from Hiruzen's family. So that means it would have to be Asuma or Konohamaru. Asuma had to die to Hidan for the story to work in the Akatsuki suppression arc, and Asuma's moveset doesn't really lend itself to Enma as a summon. He has the chakra blades and everything else. It would feel very much out of place. Now, when it comes to Konohamaru, he barely has any screen time at all, and I kind of hate the character. But he learns the Rasengan from Naruto, who was supposed to be his sensei in a way. But it would make much more sense for Konohamaru to inherit the summon when he was older. That never happened in Boruto. I don't really care about Boruto, so it's fine. And for any of them to inherit Enma in Naruto Shippuden would make them way too powerful. I mean, Enma was relative to the previous Hokage. And yeah, I mean, if Enma was a ninja of the Leaf Village, indicated by his usage of the headband, even though his summoner was dead, if I was Tsunade, I would be like, hey Enma, do you want to come help us out? Because you're really strong. Like, do you think Enma would lose to Hidan? Hidan can't even pierce Enma's skin with that scythe. He would obliterate Hidan, for example. He would be very useful against the Akatsuki, but I guess there are rules, and the summons wouldn't want to do contracts with people that don't have blood contracts with them. So yeah, I understand not having Enma there. It wouldn't be very interesting thematically either. So it's unfortunate that we don't get to see much of him after the Orochimaru fight, but it's understandable. Did you ring notifications? Definitely do that so you know when the videos come out. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because those things are very helpful. Comment down below other cool, obscure summons I could make a video about, just like the one showing up on your screen that you should watch next. And thank you so much for watching.